Now that the inauguration celebration of the chosen one is over, it's time to see exactly what promises, if any, will be followed through. Jeff Kuhner was in Washington for all of this, and here he is to give us his firsthand report on this fiasco.
Thanks, Michael. This is Jeff Kuhner at the Washington Times with his weekly special report to the Savage Nation. This week, Michael, I want to talk about the inauguration. It has now come through town. The parties are now over. People are no longer dancing at the balls. And now the serious work of governing begins. What I found most troubling, Michael, is throughout the entire lead up to the inauguration was the utter hubris and arrogance of Barack Obama. This is a man who took the train ride from Philadelphia through Delaware to Baltimore, approaching Washington, D.C., a route that was taken by Abraham Lincoln. And Obama has been explicitly modeling now his presidency on Abraham Lincoln. And what I find most disturbing, Michael, is that Abraham Lincoln, after George Washington, is probably one of our greatest presidents. This was a man who not only freed the slaves, but he basically ended Southern secessionism, he restored this country, and he led us through the crucible of war and disunion. This was a man who oversaw America in the bloodiest time in its entire history. Most people don't know this, but more Americans died during the Civil War than all of the other wars that America has been in combined. That's Vietnam, that's Iraq, that's World War II, that's World War I, that's the Revolutionary War. This is the kind of leader that Abraham Lincoln was, that despite the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dead, despite the world urging the United States to allow the South to secede, especially Britain and France, Lincoln said no, and he held on to his dream of one nation, one people, united under God. And for now Barack Obama to come into Washington with no other accomplishment except he has just won the presidency. He has not done anything so far. He hasn't passed a major piece of legislation. He hasn't won a war. He has not literally done anything for the United States. For him to put his hand on Lincoln's Bible, for him to say he is now taking on the mantle of Lincoln, is to me the utter height of arrogance and hubris. And further, Michael, one of the things that I found most disturbing was when the inauguration was taking place, this city was descended upon by Obama maniacs. There were about 2 million people screaming, wailing, crying at the National Mall and across this city when Barack Obama delivered his inaugural speech. This, to me, was not an inaugural speech the way Americans know it. This was, to me, a kind of political rally that you would see someplace in Nazi Germany or in one of these Marxist banana republics. What you saw on Tuesday, January 20th, were the shock troops for a political revolution. Obama is now coming into this city with a massive Democratic majority, and he is now demanding transformative change. And these people were there cheering him on every step of the way. But what I found to me most dismaying is that when I talked to people on the streets, when I asked them, well, what was it about his inaugural speech that made you cry, that made you weep, that literally made you euphoric with joy? What they said to me was stuff like this. I believe that God is speaking through him. I believe that he is the one. I believe that he is the one that will now heal this nation.
Oh my God.
In other words, they are looking at this man as a new Messiah, as the second, literally the second coming of Jesus Christ, a political Messiah who somehow, in our age of Oprah Winfrey, will bring about closure and healing in America. And my question to them is a simple one. What will this man heal? What will this man close? In other words, what is so fundamentally wrong with America that somehow we need a new Messiah? And here's the point I want to say to all the Obama supporters out there. We don't need a political Messiah. Nazi Germany had one, and we saw what happened with that.
Exactly.
The Soviet Union had one, and we saw what happened with that. And yet, right before our very eyes, posters of Obama everywhere, scarves with Obama's name and picture everywhere, hats of Obama, buttons of Obama, cookies named after Obama, videos of Obama, T-shirts, sweaters, jackets with his picture all over the place. It was the cult of personality. It was like the dear leader in some Marxist banana republic. This is no longer the America that I recognize. And I have news for these Obama supporters. They are in for a rude awakening, Because the biggest lie of all was that Obama promised, quote, in his inaugural speech, a new era of responsibility. And my question to Obama and to all of his supporters is this: what responsibility? This is a man who is on the record as saying he supports at least an $800 billion stimulus package, more likely a $1 trillion or $1.2 or $1.4 trillion stimulus package. And to run trillion-dollar stimulus packages this year and next year, we will be running deficits for years to come, deficits that will bury us in a mountain of debt. Where is the responsibility to the taxpayer? Where is the responsibility to future generations? This is a man who claims a new era of responsibility, yet he now calls for us to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory in Iraq. He wants us to precipitously withdraw from Iraq right when we are on the verge of winning. Where is the responsibility to our military? This is the man who claims that he wants a new era of responsibility, but he promises nationalized health care. So we no longer have responsibility over our own health insurance, but the government will take care of that for us. Where is the responsibility when he says he now wants amnesty for illegal immigrants and a path to legal status? Where is the responsibility for protecting our borders and our national sovereignty? I could literally go on and on and on. This is a man who is peddling snake oil and socialism. And just as with John F. Kennedy, and just as with FDR, there is a fawning, sycophantic media corps that is cheering him on every step of the way.
True.
And Michael, let me be very candid with you. For the first time in my life, I was ashamed of the United States. When I saw in the lead up throughout the campaign how they lied about Barack Obama's past, how they downplayed his connections to Reverend Wright, how they downplayed his ties to Bill Ayers, how they downplayed his ties to a slumlord and a convicted criminal like Tony Resco, how they are now deliberately not pursuing people in his administration, such as Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel, for his potential ties to Blagojevich and the whole scandal regarding Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich and the selling of a Senate seat. How they have given this man a pass on issue after issue after issue to get one of their own in the White House. To me, it was an absolute disgrace and a travesty against American democracy. And now we are to believe that this man is to be our savior. Well, I have news for these liberals. John F. Kennedy brought us Vietnam. FDR never got us out of the Great Depression, and in fact, his policies of appeasement directly emboldened Adolf Hitler and led to 50 million dead in Europe. And then later he sold Eastern Europe to Stalin and gave us the Cold War. What Barack Obama is going to give us is this: a bankrupt country, a country that now will look like socialist Europe, anemic economic growth, high unemployment, a nationalized healthcare system, meaning rationed care. He will give us amnesty for illegal immigrants. He will give abortion on demand. He will pass the Freedom of Choice Act, and the final dagger, he will push for the open recognition of gays in the military. And Michael, my big fear is this: what Obama and the liberals in this city refuse to understand is that now we are facing the greatest threat since the 1930s. We are now facing a potential nuclear holocaust in the Middle East, with Iran bent on getting a bomb.
Exactly.
We now know that Al-Qaeda is gathering steam in Pakistan. Europe has essentially surrendered in the fight against Islamic terrorism. The Saudis continue to fund madrasas around the world. And what is Barack Obama's answer? We need to make more alliances and more friends. He is wrong. That was the path pursued by FDR. That was the path pursued by Neville Chamberlain in the 1930s, and it led to disaster. And we are now sleepwalking into disaster. And the biggest disaster is that Barack Obama will pull our troops out of Iraq too early. He will then transfer them to Afghanistan. And in Afghanistan, the Mujahideen are waiting for us. That is the graveyard of empires. That is where the Russian Red Army was destroyed in the 1980s. It was where the British Empire was defeated in the 19th century. And they are waiting now to send American body bags back home. And when thousands and thousands of American body bags come back home from Afghanistan, my question to Barack Obama and to Chris Matthews on MSNBC and Keith Olbermann and CNN and the New York Times and the Washington Post is this: will you cut and run as you want to cut and run in Iraq? Will you reduce America to a paper tiger? Will you allow the Taliban and Al-Qaeda to gloat in their victory against the United States? Because that is exactly what is going to happen. John Kennedy gave us Vietnam. Barack Obama's Vietnam will be Afghanistan, because he does not have the strength, he does not have the character, and he does not have the temperament to win a war against Islamic terrorism. And so my big fear, Michael, is that now that the party is over, now that the drunken reverie is now done, and people get back to the serious business of governing, is this man capable to be president of the United States? And I am sorry to say this, but I honestly believe, with God as my witness, that he is not. And we shall pay the price for at least the next 2 years, and hopefully by 2010, the Republicans and the conservatives will stand up, take back control of Congress, and hopefully stop Barack Obama and his liberal missionaries from wreaking havoc on American soil. I'm Jeff Kuhner at the Washington Times with his weekly special report for the Savage Nation. Back to you, Michael.
Thanks, Jeff. We can only hope that we're wrong about this. This is the Savage Nation.
Savage.